Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
My name is Joe Sellepack. I am the Executive Director at the Broome County Council of Churches and your host today for Encounter. I have long been impressed with writers. Writers spend a lot of time. I'm a big reader. I read constantly, and I read a lot. And I do a little writing too, but people who do writing as a vocation have to spend a lot of time alone. And out of that alone time that they spend reading other writers and doing other things, they have to construct something that comes out in the form of a book or an article that other people want to read. And one of the writers in our community that I've grown to really enjoy is Valerie Zehl. Valerie has, for many of you, you would know her name from the Press and Sun Bulletin, where she worked for a number of years. How many years did you work at the Press and Sun Bulletin, Valerie?
Almost 20.
Almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And writing a lot of local pieces on people's lives, the impact that people made on our area. Do any of those stories that you wrote over the course of 20 years like kind of pop into your mind when you think about your job and your vocation?
All the time. When I'm driving around the community, I'm constantly thinking about the people I've written about in that house or this organization and wondering how they're doing.
Now, since you've retired, you've continued writing, I think. Is that true? How long have you been retired for now?
Since October of 2015, so it's been a while.
Yeah. So what have you been working on?
I've done a lot of editing, a lot of writing some for U.S. Catholic Magazine, some for other publications, and mostly now, last summer, Ellen Santa is the publisher of Anam Cara books. And last summer, we conceived an idea called Soul Seeds, realizing that people have kind of a nanosecond attention span a lot of times now, particularly in the pandemic. You know, you're on Facebook a lot, you're reading short snippets. Some of my friends set their pandemic goal to be reading a novel because they had almost forgotten what it is to allow themselves to be immersed in a book. But Soul Seeds, 101 Soul Seeds. The first one that came out was this one. It's 101 Soul Seeds for coping with a COVID Christmas. We thought of this in the fall, and then we got it out quickly, as Anam Cara can do. And it's light. It's very light reading, but it's deep, or I'd like to think it's deep anyway.
Okay.
And it ended up not being only about how to celebrate a Christmas, but about how to live a life. You know, the pandemic really, I think, drove a lot of people inward, not only inward in their homes, but inward in their souls. And they began to abandon the flurry of motion that was their life. You know, they had no choice. You know, all of a sudden, my car's tank of gas stayed full for weeks at a time. But when you're inside and you're looking at yourself and you're looking at your surroundings and you're looking at your life, you can really do some thinking. And that is what the Soul Seeds collection is about. So Ellen and I conceived this idea of writing a lot of books, an entire series, not just me, but a lot of authors. Dr. Bruce Epley in Cape Cod has written 5 books already. 3 of them are available, as are the others, on Amazon. One of them is about grandparenting, and he's helping to raise some very socially conscious grandchildren. This is his book, and if you can see it, it is Grandparents, 101 Soul Seeds for Grandparents Working for a Better World. And in it, he talks about not only, providing the Twinkies and milk after school, but how to show them by example, picking up litter or smiling at a stranger,
Right.
just how to live a life. And another writer, Carol Mao in Whitney Point, is writing about rediscovering yourself. Sometimes you get lost. You're a mom, you're a wife, you're a worker, you are whatever you are. You're no longer the little girl who had dreams or the little boy. And her whole book, which is being edited now and will be available in probably a month or two, is about rediscovering who you are and then acting on that. And Karen Salita in Nevada wrote a book about reinventing yourself. What if you don't like who you are? What if you look at yourself in the pandemic and go, no, this isn't what I want to be?
Right.
So, and she talks about not only career changes, but how do I refocus my attention toward the person I chose to be early on? Or how do I choose a new person? What are my values now? How do I live those values? How do I craft my own soul toward that end? So that's what the Soul Seeds books are. Bruce has written several others also about, let me see, Finding Yourself Again. These are the other two books that I just mentioned.
Yeah, Bruce Epperly is a friend of mine. Actually, his wife.
Oh my gosh.
His wife was a pastor in the International Council of Community Churches. She was a pastor at Palisades Community Church when I was pastor in Hudson, Iowa. And so I met Bruce there. I've heard him speak at Stetson University at their pastor school. And we actually had him come here a number of years ago to talk about the earth and spirituality and trying to construct a holistic spirituality that engages not only the inside of you, but also the whole earth. How do we care for the earth? How do we love the earth as part of our walk with God, which is just a pretty profound thing. And Bruce is a great writer. He writes a lot of books on healing, on spirituality, and I've tried to get him to come on to Encounter on occasions, but I haven't been fortunate enough to get him on a week where he's got some downtime, because, as you said, he's raising two grandkids, and he's also a pastor of a church, and currently I think he's moving to back to Washington with his wife, where he's going to again. He wants to be close enough to his kids. His daughter and son-in-law got a job down there, and so he's following them down there so that he can be a responsible grandparent, which I think a lot of us can relate to, as far as where we are in our lives and what we do on a day-to-day basis with our grandkids.
He weaves everything you just said. He weaves into all of his books, all of his Soul Seeds books, and he is very prolific. This one is Soul Seeds for Healing and Wholeness, and then this one is for Peacemakers and Justice Seekers. Those are Bruce's books.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about your book. Now, what is a soul seed? We've used that word a lot in your book, as well as in other people's books, calling them soul seeds. What actually is a soul seed?
So there's 101 of them in each book, and that's daunting. When you're trying to talk an author into something, it's really daunting. I don't know 101 anything. But that right there is a soul seed. It's the facing pages. Okay. So there's one portion here, and then maybe a thought, maybe a quote, maybe a prayer, maybe a meditation. Each author is a little bit different. Right. But each one, they are unique in that they come directly out of the heart of the author, who may or may not have ever written a book before, who may not consider him or herself a writer. Bruce, I think, has 50-some books in print. Carol Mao, this is her first. Karen Salito, this is her first. I have a bunch, but nothing like this. It gives the writer the opportunity, and when I'm expressing it to them, open your heart and talk. And it's just a little short passage, but it's your thought, it's your heart. It's the opportunity for one soul to serve another soul. And the goal is not to win a Pulitzer.
Yeah.
They're not gonna. But the goal is, can your life experience impact your reader? So this one, for parents of adult children, for example, I wrote last time I was in Arizona with my daughter. And it forces, when you try to write a book, it forces you inside and to ruminate. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? So it prompted a lot of thought. It prompted me to call my kids and say, I'm sorry. I realize I could have done that better. I'm sorry. And then it opened avenues of conversation, and it gave me a lot of ways to connect with other parents that I've heard about whose children have all kinds of issues, or I don't have grandchildren, but they do. And that's a whole nother minefield, because you see these little kids being raised, and your own mistakes, and maybe you're watching your kids replicate those mistakes.
Right.
So we are looking also for authors who will address the whole human condition, coping with depression. What are your tools? How did you personally cope with depression? You personally, how are you living a sober lifestyle? How did you manage your way through these difficulties in life, or through these joys in life? I want to write one now on gardening. I live on the south side of Binghamton. It's a very, very diverse neighborhood. My garden draws people together. People will stop and talk, and I make all these new friends, and they know I'm the crazy old white lady on the corner, and it's wonderful. I love it. I've gotten to know so many people who, a young lady from, I think she's Bangladesh, she stopped and was talking in halting English about growing garbanzo beans in her garden in her old village. It's like, how cool is that? So gardens too, everybody's got different life experiences, and you can use them to connect with your reader and to help them realize what their wealth of experience is. So that's what soul seeds are, and they're exciting.
So over your shoulder, you have a pencil that's on your wall. Can you?
Yeah.
And before the show, we were talking about what that means to you, and I think that this actually has something to say as far as your inclination toward writing and soul seeds in particular. So, can you share that why you have that pencil there?
I have a website. It's valeriezehl.com, so I can remember it. It's nice and simple. And through it, I've helped people publish their books. And the company through which I have the ISBNs under is called Little Pencil Press. That comes from a quote attributed to Mother Teresa about, I'm a little pencil in the hand of God who's writing a love letter to the world. And I love that quote, because that is what we all are. It's a good thing there's an eraser on the end of that pencil, because how often do we get it wrong? But that's our goal. And as I get older, I'm so aware that I'm a soul. I was a bunch of other stuff in my lifetime. I'm almost 66. But above all, I came in and I will leave as a soul. I'm accountable for all my tasks, all that I did. I was a mom, I was a writer, I was whatever I was, a wife. But most of all, I'm a soul. Right. And that is more and more coming into my awareness every minute of every day. Am I doing my soul good? Am I doing other souls good? Am I doing what I'm supposed to do? Not that I think there's some great big chalkboard about, you failed here, but I in 2014, I was diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And I was too busy to really look it up on the internet. And it's a good thing I didn't. I've done that since. And I realized my chances were not great. I kind of forked it over to Dr. John Kloss, who's brilliant, and Dr. Michael Fallon, the radiation oncologist. And I said, I'm too busy. You guys are going to have to take care of this. And then surgery in Roswell with Dr. Elizabeth Dexter, who was amazing. And I could have been done right then. I was on life support for a little while. It could have been the end. Would I have, since then, I've read a lot of near-death literature. I personally did not have a near-death experience, but a lot of people have. Dr. Eben Alexander is a neurosurgeon whose brain turned to mush. I think he had encephalitis, if I'm not mistaken. And he had a near-death experience, and he said, my brain was so infected, it could not have generated what I experienced. I know this. I know the brain. It could not have done that. Something else was at work. To me, those are very sobering experiences, and they're not confined to Christian experience. Muslim, everybody,
Right.
all cultures have these experiences. Well, what is that? I can deny I've gone through a vast and varied spiritual path, but I can't deny there's something. Do I know what? No. Will I ever? I don't know. Not in this lifetime, maybe.
So my guest today is Valerie Zehl. We've been talking about her book Soul Seeds and the whole series on soul seeds, but the soul seeds for Christmas, COVID Christmas, and soul seeds for parenting adult children, both of her books. She wants to kind of let us know about them. But the whole series is called Soul Seeds, and there are a number of writers from around the country who have been contributing to this series. And they're I love that quote that you just said about our lives can be a love letter. God, we are
God's
a
little
love
pencil.
letter being written by God, and it's just profound in a lot of ways, because most people, and as you've been indicated, a lot of people don't feel as if their life is noteworthy, and they understand themselves as a small little pencil maybe. But even then, there is a spark, there is that soul seed that can emerge from a person's life, even when they're not feeling as if they're a big pencil. So, can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, that to me is just an amazing way of looking at a person's life.
Every one of us has had challenges. And one of the things I mentioned in the Parents of Adult Children book is your kids watch you.
Yeah.
They watch you sometimes fall flat on your face, because we humans do that. Sometimes we meet obstacles that we are not able to overcome at that moment, but they see the struggle, and there's victory in the struggle, whether we are ultimately victorious or not. We're trying to be better people. That's not a small thing. And there's victory in living with, bipolar disorder.
Right.
It's not easy. I met a lovely person who was helping me here in my home. And ultimately, it turns out he's a heroin addict, an active heroin addict. He's a beautiful human being. One does not preclude the other. I didn't always know that. I had a lot to learn. I've met a lot of people, and I've learned a lot through those people. The Black Lives Matter movement, and I just finished a course called Imagine No Racism at Tabernacle UMC. There's a lot to learn about what other people live through. I had no idea. I've always been a white girl. I lived in North Tonawanda, which was a sundown town into the 60s, where if you had dark skin, you didn't belong there after sundown. So what racism is within me? So in writing these Soul Seeds books, or in eliciting authors to write them, when they can open their hearts and talk about things that are going to edify me, they're going to teach my soul something. They're not only going to teach me how they coped with the natural circumstances of their situation, be it a heroin addiction, be it being Black, but they're going to teach me something about empathizing with another soul and that soul's struggles. Because everybody you meet, the grouchiest lady in the grocery store, she's grouchy for a reason.
Right.
What's going on in her life? It's easy to get irritated, but then you realize they've got something going on. And I think so much of politics and the pandemic has opened us up to realizing we're all very different people, but there are a lot of common denominators.
Yeah, there is. I often think about this when I'm going through the checkout line at the grocery store, and I'm the people who operate the machines do it from a perspective, some of them do it because they have to have a job and that has to be the place it is. Others are, they do it from the perspective of, I need some spending money. There's a number of people that are there. And each time you walk through there, there's varied emotions. There's a person who's career oriented, so they're very perfunctory and they're polite and the rest of that. But every now and then you find somebody who's grumpy. And when you're going through there, they just want to get you done. You're another number. They just want to get you out of there. And I used to when I was younger, I would treat them as if, with the same kind of disdain that they were treating me with. But now I've taken to actually doing it differently, because what I do is I view them as what happens if this was my child, my kid who's here, and if they're having a bad day, and I'm walking through and and I see it in them, I would want to try to help them somehow. And so I try to find some way of connecting with that person, whether it's the bling that they're wearing on their apron, whether it's, whatever it happens to be. I try to connect with them. And then at the end, I try to leave them feeling better than when I came. So it's just nice, right? But it's also trying to help make the world a better place in some small way. And each one of us can do something like that for another person.
That's being a pencil. That's being
Yeah.
God's pencil. I noticed during the pandemic, particularly, but now too, it's lingering. It used to be eyes would meet you in the grocery aisle. Somebody's eyes would just meet you. And now it's almost as though, oh my gosh, I'm going to get the virus from your eyes.
Right.
So not only is their face guarded, most of it, but their eyes don't meet your eyes. And it's like, oh, no. So I try really hard. Hello, how are you? Because we need connection. We need connection. Some people have those jobs just because they're lonely too, I've discovered. We can all give to each other through, even a smile under a mask. Your eyes crinkle and somebody's smiling, or out on the street. At one point, a couple of years ago, I was bending down picking tomatoes in my yard, and I stood up and I surprised somebody on the sidewalk. He wasn't the least bit happy to be surprised. He looked really angry. And I stuck my hand out and said, here's a tomato, want a tomato? And then he burst into this little 12-year-old grin, and he said, oh, I haven't had a fresh tomato since, my grandmother's house in Alabama. And, silly little things. If we want to connect with the world, if we want to make the world a better place, it doesn't take money's great, but that's not the only thing.
Yeah, there was one experience I had at Subway that was really kind of a cool thing. I was walking through. I visited a older gentleman, 94 years old. Or at the time he was 94. He's since passed away, but I was visiting him weekly, and I would bring him lunch. And so I had this Subway coupon, and it was expiring or had expired, but because my eyesight is what it is, if I don't have glasses, I can't read what the expiration date is on it. And so I handed one to the person in line behind me, said, if you can use this, please do. And then when I was going through, she ended up, they were both expired. All the coupons that I had were expired, but she went through and paid for my lunch. And in so doing, she actually paid for the lunch of the gentleman that I was visiting too. And so, I had this amazing experience in a line at Subway, which was just absolutely, mind-blowing to me. This woman buying me lunch when I handed her an expired um, card. But it's just nice, and it's kind, and it's caring, and it's considerate, and it's all of those things that we want to kind of engender in the world around us.
Absolutely.
Thank you for being on today, Valerie, and for sharing with our audience and our listeners about the soul seeds and how we can all be a love letter in the hand of God. So I'm so glad that we were able to finally connect this way. And for all of my audience today and listeners, I ask that you would be kind with each other and learn how to be that soul seed in the world around us. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.